In this video, I want to talk about backing up your computer. Now, if you're anything like me, it's very, very, very rare that something really bad happens to your computer and you lose files and you wish you had backed it up. So I think for many of us, it's one of those things that we don't really think about too much, even though we should be doing it religiously. I think a lot of people don't really study what we should be doing and why we should be doing it. So it kind of goes on the back burner and we put it off and maybe we're doing a backup. But when we finally do have the problem, we forget, well, what was I doing for the backup and what are these files and what software do I need to recover it and how do I recover it and that kind of thing. So I want to go through some of that and step back and look at what we're doing, what are the reasons for doing it, what are we worried about, why are we backing up, and what are some of the best ways to do it, just to get you thinking about, maybe there's other ways to back up that are better than what you hear about all the time, and maybe there's a better option for you out there. When you look at backup procedures, there is a ton of terminology that software vendors use to describe the different types of backups. There's backup, restore, mirror, clone, recovery media, file history, incremental backup, differential backup, synchronizing files, system image, ISO files. And I think for a lot of people, those terms are strange at best and confusing, and we don't know which of those are important and honestly, what does it all mean? Given that, the other things that are very questionable to people, of all those things, what should I use? A lot of the software has 10 different methods for backing up. Which of those should I use? And more basically, what do I back up? What of my stuff do I need to back up? Operating system, files, that kind of thing. And then, as I mentioned before, when you finally, maybe after a year or 2 years or 3 years, you finally have that event, that catastrophic event, and you have to recover, you reach for your backup thumb drive or whatever and say, okay, now what did I put on that drive and what software did I use and how do I do the restore procedure? How old is that backup? What were the files that I backed up? Do they make any sense now? Are they even usable? And what software do I need to recover them? And the biggest question is, if your computer is dead and you can't reboot, can you even run the recovery software? I mean, you've got all these files in the special recovery software. Maybe you can't even use it. So there's a lot of questions. I'm hoping to clear up some of this and help you find the best method for what you need. So we'll look at some basic backups, starting with what can really happen to your computer that you need to worry about. So the number one thing is hardware failure. For example, you've got hard drives on your computer, one or more hard drives. You've got a power supply. You've got a motherboard with CPU, memory, input, output, like your network connections, your HDMI, your USB. Any of those components or subcomponents can fail. In my experience, the one that's much more likely to fail is this hard drive. The hard drive is a mechanical device. It's got a spinning platter that spins at 5,000 or 7,000 RPM, something like that. And it's a mechanical device with an arm that moves around. And if you drop that or you damage it in some way, you won't be able to use it to boot your system. So to me, that's the biggest concern hardware-wise, is a hard drive. Now, of course, your power supply can fail, your motherboard can fail, your memory can go bad. But honestly, in my experience, it's that hard drive that is the one that really is concerning, because I've had a number of experiences over the years where the hard drive has just failed. So to me, that's the big thing. If you have a hard drive failure, you turn on your computer and all you get is a black screen with a cursor and a error message that says can't find a bootable drive, which means you can't access any files on that drive. It's dead. It's inaccessible. That's a big concern, because it probably means you'll never get those files back unless you take it to a professional who's going to charge you a lot of money. And even then, you're not guaranteed you're going to get your files. So that's a big one. That's a big concern, at least to me. And of course, there's software failure. As we all know, a lot of things can go wrong software-wise. You can get a bad update to Windows. You can get a bad driver. You can get a virus. You can get malware. But the worst of those, to me, is back to the same as if your hard drive dies. If you can't boot because of a software failure, you may not be able to access your files, which is really bad. Now, other people seem to worry about things like accidentally deleting files, which means, you're working on something, you accidentally delete a good file that you really needed, or else you overwrite a good file with something, you made a mistake and you overwrite the old one and you say, oh my goodness, I need to get that old file back. I wish I had it. To me, that's not a big concern. I think some people really seem to worry about that. To me, I don't, if you delete it, it's probably in your recycle bin. And I just can't remember the last time I've overwrote a file and wished I had the old version. And then there's concerns about corrupted files or software or operating system. And yeah, that's a big concern. But the big one to me is you can't boot. You can't really access your files. Of all the things on your computer, what do you want to back up? You've got operating system, software, applications, and you've got what are called configurations. And those are the less visible things, but equally important. Your bookmarks for your browser, your passwords. Some people keep passwords on their hard drive, which I think is a big mistake, but you can have your browser maintain a file of passwords so that when you log onto a website, it's there and it's available. And then there's preferences for each of your software apps. You may have special preferences that define how your application runs to make it personalized. And then you've got your personal files, your documents, your videos, your music, and emails. So which of that stuff do we need to back up? Well, in my view, the software, including the operating system and the software applications, I don't really see the need to back them up. And the reason is because, for example, with your operating system, Windows 10, if you need a new copy of Windows 10, you just go online, you get a computer, go online, you can download a file and use that to reinstall a fresh copy. And you don't even need a product key. Windows 10 keeps track of your hardware, and I think they store it on the cloud registration key that you don't even need to enter a product key. You can just download it and reinstall it, and you're set to go. So it's a fairly quick process. I'm not really concerned about reinstalling Windows. And in fact, if I have a problem in my system because of a bad driver or a virus, it's better, in my view, to reinstall a fresh copy of Windows. So I'm not real concerned about operating system, saving the operating system. And with software and applications, again, you can download those. Most of my software is free software that you just download. Doesn't even need a product key. Probably 90% of my software is just downloadable, like Google Earth and video players, music players, that kind of thing. Those things are free. You can download fairly quickly. You can be up and running. So personally, I don't see operating system and software as something that I need to really be concerned about when I back up. The big thing is the irreplaceable stuff that I consider the configurations, especially your passwords, and then your personal files, your documents, videos, music, and emails. Those things, to me, you really need to back up. So what are your options to back everything up? To me, the number one ideal option, and one you never really hear about, is what I call duplication. And that is keeping duplicate versions of your computer accessible. So in other words, here I've got a image of a desktop, maybe at home in your home office, and I've got another computer, which is a laptop, and basically they are identical or fairly identical to each other. They are duplicates. Duplicate computers, duplicate operating systems. You've installed the same or similar operating system on both. Your applications you've downloaded the same applications on both. You got the same configurations copied in real time between both. And your same personal files copied in real time between both. To me, this is the very best thing you can do. And of course, the reason is anything happens with either of those, you just turn around in your seat and you can access the other one. And it's just like They're both identical copies. So, of course, the benefits are everything's instantly available, but you also don't need to rely on a recovery process or software. And that may not sound like a big deal, but if you're trying to recover something after 3 years of doing backups, and you may have a dead computer, and you may not remember what the recovery process is, and where's that recovery software, and how do I do it? What's the procedure? What were these files? When did I back them up? All of that stuff can be a real pain if you have to go through and do a recovery process if you haven't thought about it in years. Of course, if you have two separate operating systems, there's a very slight chance that both will have failed. The other benefit is if something happens to one computer, you can get on the other computer and debug the first failure on the first computer while you're still having full access. So it helps you in the debugging process and repairing the failure. And of course, it's great with laptops as your second device because you can basically take your office computer on the run with you wherever you go. Of course, there's a cost. You've got to have duplicate computers and duplicate operating systems. And keep in mind, you usually can't legally just move your operating system to another machine. You can't just copy it over. And you do have to have duplicate applications installed, which might cost you some money unless they're free applications. You might want to have a network because the process of keeping these files copied in real time is better if you have a network. And you also might need some duplication software, but in my experience, that's free, so you don't have to worry about that. So how do you do it? Well, it's called synchronizing. And here I've got an image of two computers connected via network. Might be at your home, going through your router, going to your internet service provider. And let's say I'm working on computer A on a text file. I'm writing a story, and it's called story.txt. And I make some changes to story.txt and save it to my hard drive on computer A. The way this works is there is software on the computer that notices that, hey, somebody just saved a new, fresh version of story.txt over the old version on computer A. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that over to the same location on computer B and keep those files synchronized at all times. And it happens in both directions. It can, if you make a change on B, it will go back to A. So basically, that's what synchronizing is. You keep all files between two computers synchronized in real time. And it's basically a copying process. It recognizes something's changed and it copies. And it does the same thing if you delete a file, it will delete on the other computer. So it makes them look identical at all times. Now, this is good for personal data files and config files, but it is not for operating system or software application files. So just keep that in mind. And again, the good part is you don't need any special software for recovery because these computers are always identical. So you just sit down and start it up and you're ready to go. So you would install operating systems on both computers, duplicate software applications on both computers, and leave it to your synchronizing software to copy these in real time. I have a software called Sync Folders. There's others out there. This is a free application that's very small and very easy to handle. And you basically set it up. You tell it what folders to synchronize, and you set it up on a schedule. Mine I set up every evening at 8 or something, and it goes through, and in the background it makes sure the files are synchronized. Now, if you don't like that for some reason, if it's too much of a pain or costs too much, there's a second option, which I call the dual boot, dual operating system option. And in that, I have one computer, but it has multiple hard drives. On one hard drive, for example, it might have a Windows operating system. On the second, it might have another operating system. For example, you could use a free operating system such as Linux, which you may have heard of. It's been around for many, many, many years. And some of the versions of Linux are kind of Windows-like. So you could have these two operating systems. And on the third drive, you could have all your personal files, config files, data files, all your email and everything else. So if one of these drives fails, if, for example, drive 1, your operating system fails, you could just unplug that, plug in your other operating system, and start up your computer, boot up to the other operating system, and all your files are available. And you can, since you can boot up your computer, you can troubleshoot this bad hard drive or bad operating system, and you can go on with your business. I think this is a very good option. It's inexpensive, and it keeps all of your files backed up. You can even synchronize. You can have a fourth drive and synchronize files in real time between drives 3 and 4 with all your personal and data files. So it's kind of an inexpensive way to do option 1. Again, the costs, you need dual operating systems, which may or may not be a cost. Duplicate applications installed on both. Just keep in mind, if you put, for example, Linux on the other drive, your applications may not be identical. You may not have the same applications available for Linux, so that's a concern. You also may have to buy additional drives. And if you have a major hardware failure, such as a motherboard or a power supply, that's not going to help you, although your files will still be available. And another cost you might need to learn is a separate operating system. Now, there's a third one, which I call you just synchronize your personal files. What you would do here is you got one computer with multiple hard drives. On one drive, you've got all your personal files, and then you can have a portable hard drive, and you can synchronize between those. So you can just plug in this drive, and it synchronizes files on both computers, and now you've got all of your personal files backed up and identical on both computers. You don't need any special software to recover it. You don't need any procedures. You just plug it in and go. If one of these fails, you just plug in the other one and go. The downside is you're not backing up your operating system and software if you think that's important. Those are my choices for the 3 top methods. Let me talk about some of the others that you hear a lot about, which I don't think are really very useful. But one of them is called a system image, and you hear about that a lot. What is a system image? Well, you basically take a snapshot of everything on your hard drive, and that includes your operating system, all your software, all your personal folders, everything on your hard drive, and it converts that to a special format file, like a .xml or a .vhd or other files. Now, the question is this a good option for you? Well, do you need to go through all the hassle of backing up your operating system and applications? We already talked about that. I don't think so. You might disagree, but personally, I don't think that's necessary. The other thing is these are all encoded or encrypted files, so you need a recovery disk with those files on it, and you need special software and a process to restore those files. So on their own, they're fairly useless files unless you go through a restore or recovery process. And the other thing is you can only use those to restore the same computer. And if that computer was corrupted at the time you took the system image, it's not going to do you any good because you're just restoring a corrupted system. So what good is it? And again, these are all in encoded or encrypted format. You can't look at them and see what they are or when they were done or what files are included. You have to go through the backup process. The other thing you have to consider is it's a snapshot. When you decide to take a system image, you're taking a snapshot. After that, it's not updated as you update your files like you would if you synchronize. You have to go through and make an additional system image if you want to update your files. So to me, this is a very, for me, I just don't think it's an option. I don't see the benefit of it. I think it's difficult and really not very usable for me. The other option that you see a lot of is called file history. And, Windows recommends you do file history. What is a file history? Well, a file history saves a timeline of file versions. Now, what is that? Basically, it's, say today you save all of your files. Then, if day after tomorrow you make some changes, it saves those changed files, and it also saves the old versions too. So you keep saving updated files in a timeline, and you get folders that are dated by the date you made the change. So you keep additional copies. You keep adding and adding copies of changed folders and files as you make changes. Now, when you think about it, what's the benefit of that? Why do you need not only your latest files, but all the versions prior to that? Well, I think it's for those people who worry about accidentally deleting files or making mistakes and saving a bad file over a previous good version, and they need to return to a previous version. Personally, that just hasn't happened to me. Usually if I, make a mistake, it's, you can recover from that fairly easily. So I don't understand the need for file history. Now, there is some dedicated software out there for doing backups, and they have similar options called differential or incremental backups. And it's basically a similar thing, but they use incremental files, and you need special software to recombine them. They're kind of encoded files. So, again, I don't see the benefit. And if you're keeping additional copies of your new and old versions of the files, that can start to take a lot of hard drive space over time. You're just adding and adding to your files. So again, why do you need it? How often do you need to do something like that and revert to a previous version? If you're in a business or an office environment and you're working on critical files and different people are inputting and making revisions and you want to keep track of the revisions, yeah, you might need that, but why not just manually rename the files instead of, as revision 1, 2, 3, and 4, instead of having this do it for you automatically. So again, I don't see the benefit of file history. You may differ, but that's my perspective. Final thoughts. I think any backup solution that saves data in a compressed, encrypted, incremental, or other non-usable format and requires separate software or hardware to reinstate to usable form is useless. I just don't see the benefit. I'd much rather do a synchronizing where you're just clearly backing something up. You're making it identical to the other version. If you're a system administrator, you may need something like that. But I think for the average user, I don't see the need. The other thing is, like I say, restoring from backups is done so rarely, you don't want to have to remember complicated restoration processes and tools. If, 2 years down the line, you need to remember, how did I do that? And what do I need to do to recover? It's just too much to have to worry about. And the other thought, there's a lot of specialized software out there that has many, many, many ways to do backups. But don't just do stuff because that's what software vendors offer. Think about it and do what you really need. All of those options they give you, maybe it's to sell software. Maybe it's not to give you what you need. And my last thought, really consider synchronizing your files. To me, that's by far the easiest and best way to do your backups. Anyway, I hope it helped. Talk to you later. I hope you have a good day. Thanks.